Hello everyone, I'm Heath, and in this video we're going to be taking a look at an advantage or disadvantage mechanic if you are not operating inside a 1d20 environment. Like in the last video we talked about, I was kind of thinking about moving away from. We were talking about potentially 2d10 systems or 3d6 systems in order to reduce the amount of randomness in the game and basically emphasize the character's skill more so than the roll of a die when trying to resolve the outcome of actions. Now, the advantage and disadvantage mechanic in 5th edition I like, generally speaking, and I've seen a lot of other systems that use something similar now, because it allows you to get away from tallying up of endless +1s, +2s, +3s, another +1, -1, -2 in order to resolve some kind of action. And in the past, I have definitely been for that kind of thing, and that's just because, I do come out of kind of a more simulationist line of thought. But on the other hand, with the kind of people that I game with today and will be more likely to be able to have games with, and also my interest in moving toward more faster-paced storytelling kinds of games, trying to come up with what the modifiers are to +1, +2, and this long list of things really isn't the kind of thing that I want to do today. And so I think that advantage and disadvantage is a way to adjust for things that are advantageous to the character or disadvantageous to the character when they're attempting an action without trying to get too deep. And of course, in 5th edition Dungeons & Dragons, you've got advantage and you've got disadvantage. And both of them mean that you roll an additional d20 with your roll. If you have advantage, you get to use the higher roll. If you have disadvantage, you get to use the lower roll. I think that that's elegant, but I actually think it could be taken further. And I think it could especially be taken further if we were using, for instance, the 2d10 system that at the time when I was sending notes to people regarding the Journey to the Tree of Sorrows RPG, I was recommending. Although we did take a look at the advantages of a 3d6 system as well in the last video. And so this is what I said in the context of a 2d10 system. I said advantage and disadvantage. Rather than rolling a single extra d20 for advantage or disadvantage, additional d10s are rolled up to a maximum of 3, and then selecting either the highest or the lowest 2 dice depending on whether the character is rolling at advantage or disadvantage. Giving advantage in the d20 game is something approximating adding 4 or 4.5 to the roll. Rolling 2d10 and taking additional d10s for advantage or disadvantage is closer to adding and subtracting 2 from the roll. This means that most modifiers to skill rolls are replaced by adding or subtracting dice from the ones rolled. The only static modifier could be from the character's skill. Okay, so here's what I was trying to think of regarding this. Assuming we're operating within the 2d10 system, I didn't see any reason to cap a character at having advantage or disadvantage. In 5th edition, you can either have advantage or you have disadvantage. If you have both, they cancel each other out, but you can't have double advantage or double disadvantage. You either have advantage or you have disadvantage, or you don't. But I think if you're operating within a 2d10 kind of system, or 3d6, we could modify this way, you open up the possibility of being able to have multiple levels of advantage or multiple levels of disadvantage. And I think in something that I wrote, which is obviously not here, I think I had capped it at 3. Now, of course, a single level advantage or disadvantage cancels out, so that would go away. But if you have like 3 things that might give you advantage and 1 thing that gives you disadvantage, you'd end up with 2 levels of advantage, and so you could roll 2 extra d10s. That gives you additional granularity that rolling the d20s just doesn't with advantage or disadvantage only. Because, a +4, a +4.5, that's nothing to sneeze at. But if you are talking about an extra d10 on the roll of 2d10, that's a little bit less, so it's a little bit more open to negotiation between the players and the game master. So we're thinking about here how much influence should environmental factors beyond the character's control influence whether or not they are successful or unsuccessful in a given task that they are undertaking. That's what I was trying to get my mind around here. And so what I was trying to do when I was thinking about this, and of course this is just notes I put together, so nothing about this is final. But the idea was that if we are just using add or subtract d10s, we're giving more flexibility to the game master, because the game master isn't saying, oh, well, in this situation, it's definitely a +1, or it is definitely a +2, or it's definitely a +3. They're just saying, oh, now here is something in the environment in general that would make it easier for you to accomplish the task. Take an advantage die. a bonus die. I think I ended up calling it in later material. But, or, oh, yep, here's something that might make it more difficult for you to accomplish the task. Here is a penalty die for you. And because it's, about plus or minus 2, there's some negotiation that can go back and forth with the game master and the player about exactly what circumstances warrant them. And, you can give them out or you can accept them without being overwhelmed in any particular, one circumstance, because 1 is just plus or minus 2. And it allows the game master to not have to, here's this large table about all possible things which could potentially influence the task at hand. You just get rid of that, and then here are some potential things that could, and if you can think of a certain number of things that would give you advantage or disadvantage, then apply the bonus or the penalty dice. And then by capping it at plus 3, or negative 3, plus 3 bonus dice, negative 3 penalty dice, advantage, disadvantage. You're also limiting the amount of discussion that can take place at the table to keep the action moving. Because if you, for instance, as a player, can think of 3 things that would be advantageous to you, to your character, in accomplishing the task, at the table right there, you don't have to go on and think of 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and think about, oh, you're missing something. Because you're just capping it at the most you can have is 3 bonus die. Or likewise, if the game master is thinking of reasons why it's more difficult for you to accomplish the task, they don't need to think of reason 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8 why it's more difficult. As long as you've got at least 3 reasons why it's more difficult, that's your maximum penalty dice that you can have. And then you roll. Because as I was talking about in another video, the reason the dice are there and do have an element of randomness is because they are taking care of everything at the table that we are not explicitly considering. There are other factors that might influence your success or failure, and once we get to this level, well, that's the level of resolution that we've got, and then we let the dice take care of everything else from there. Now, my line of thought when I was saying down here that the only static modifiers that would be applied are the character's skill is trying to distinguish between things that are intrinsic to the character, such as their skill, and things that are part of the environment and are therefore external to the character. So you've got this distinction between what exactly gives me a solid bonus, a hard bonus, a plus 2 to my roll. Those must be things that are intrinsic to my character, and therefore they are things that are on my character sheet that I can see. What is it that might make this easier or more difficult for my character to accomplish? Those are things that are out there in the environment, in the world, and they will be handled by giving me bonus or penalty dice, advantage or disadvantage dice, whatever you want to talk about. So I like that distinction. Bonuses come from what is intrinsic to the character and what is on your character sheet. The bonus and penalty dice come from things out there in the environment. Now, who knows how this actually ends up going, or whether it's even used at all. But that was my line of thought as I was putting together all these notes to share with the development team. Now, like I said, ultimately we decided to go with 5th edition kind of as it was written for the project that we were doing, but I'm trying to revisit all of these notes since I've got other things to develop on my own, and so I can completely look at all this fresh and decide what's the best way to go for any individual project. So what do you think? Is this a good way to go? Is this a terrible way to go? Is this a reasonable philosophy to pursue, or is it something that should be abandoned? Please let me know down in the comments section. I would love to know what you think. And in the meantime, if you've enjoyed this video, please like, subscribe, and all of that. But also, please do go back to my YouTube channel, Heath's Tabletop and Fantasy, because I've got about 150 videos on tabletop and the fantasy genre that you might be interested in if you've enjoyed this video. And hey, please do check out The Cultist. That's my web show about modern-day cultists who are just trying to worship Cthulhu in a world full of people who just don't understand. Season 1 is on my YouTube channel right now, so check out The Cultists as well. Later!